Senegal's training at Rutgers, Morocco's training in New Jersey. Like all of these teams are in the community as a part of this. So you might be at your bagel store and run into, if you look at someone who looks like he's pretty good at soccer, who knows? Could be the star player for Senegal.
Every time I opened or went to the library, I found more about women riding bicycles and changing the way women dressed because they didn't want to get their skirts stuck in the spokes. And so I think sports is integral to society, to progress. And I mean, it's way more than just watching a game, although that's a lot of fun too.
For someone who's like a complete outsider to go toe to toe with the greatest boxer of all time, right? Like, what an amazingly inspirational story. Didn't he go on to fight bears later on?
Yes, he did. He did. He became sort of, and it's funny because he had such a fascinating life. But yeah, he fought bears. I mean, he became like an attraction to himself that he was, anything to kind of get people in the ring. This is just the way that boxing was back in the day. And for him to get a shot against Muhammad Ali and to last as long as he did against the greatest of all time is certainly a gritty New Jersey athlete if there ever was.
Even a comedian like me knows that New Jersey is America's favorite butt of the joke. But that is all gotta stop. And the Garden State Roots podcast is here to tell you why. Because it turns out, my friends, New Jersey has been a major revolutionary force for 2.5 centuries now. From music, to film, to sports, to tech, and from food to politics. Join me, Justin Williams, to explore Jersey's most revolutionary historical moments and figures over 8 episodes of gutsy game changers and amazing catalysts. Garden State Roots is digging up some stories. How relaxing. We're in Hoboken, New Jersey, in between Frank Sinatra Drive and Hudson Street, in a small recreation space called Elysian Park. It's much smaller than it used to be, but it's still a highly significant historical location, especially if you, like me, are a sports fan. That's because it was back here in 1846 that the New York Baseball Club beat the Knickerbockers 23-1 in the world's first ever recorded game of baseball. Pretty cool, right? Sports are so central to cultural life in America. Hell, in most places around the world, it unites people across barriers and often reflects something crucial about our identity and values. Crazy thing is, so much of what we love today was shaped in some way by what happened on the playing fields, pitches, and courts of New Jersey. So lace up your cleats, put on your glove, and warm up that throwing arm, because this New Jersey story is going to hit your baller brain right out of the park. I feel like this is an important episode because New Jersey has got to be one of the only places in America that I know of where some of the biggest sports teams based here take the name of another state. The campaign for the New Jersey Jets and Garden State Giants starts here, folks, and I can't see that being a big issue with our friends across the Hudson. Joining us today is Sue Macy, the author of 18 books on sports and women's history. She's born and bred in New Jersey and currently living in Inglewood. Welcome, Sue.
Thanks very much. Glad to be here.
Also joining us is Steve Politi. He's a sports columnist for NewJersey.com. Thanks for joining us, Steve.
No problem. Thanks, Justin, for having me. I appreciate it.
So as we heard at the top of the show, the first ever recorded baseball game took place in Hoboken, New Jersey. Bat and ball games had been played plenty before, but this was the first time it had taken place under formal written rules that remained similar to the modern game. Considering over 70 million people attended Major League Baseball games in 2025, this was a pretty powerful moment of creation. But I'm not happy with just one. I want more. Steve, what's a pioneering moment that our listeners should know more about?
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about things that are significant in New Jersey history, right? This was Princeton, this was Rutgers, 1869. 25 Princeton students took the train to New Brunswick, New Jersey for what is the first intercollegiate football game. I think most people who witnessed it, and there weren't many standing on the sidelines, which is now a parking lot outside the Rutgers Student Center. If you want to go reenact it, there's no field there anymore. But the witnesses saw a much different game than the one we're accustomed to than we see at MetLife Stadium or SHI Stadium in Piscataway now. The 25 players aside, the final score is 6-4. You're not going to see that in the Rose Bowl these days. Completely different rules. It more resembles a soccer or even a rugby game than it does a college football game but what it did start was just a complete industry. Now, if you look at what college football has become since then, just think about the way the game has transformed modern college education, higher education in the country. So the beginning roots of all we see now in this world of college sports started on that field in 1869 in New Brunswick.
No, there's amazing genesis of that story. I'm trying to, wrap my head around 6 to 4 and what the NIL payment would be. We just well, it's funny to
Exactly. There'd be a lot of money at stake. Can you imagine those? Can you imagine those guys? And they weren't kids. I mean, they were. Some of them went on to be New Jersey Supreme Court justices. I mean, they were very powerful people in New Jersey history. The roots of people who played that game. But I can only imagine if you took them back right now with the crowds, with 50,000 people in that stadium, Michigan coming in for a game, it would be unrecognizable to them.
yeah, it would almost be like sorcery, the level of production for our games now, right? Sue, is there any soccer history that from New Jersey history that you're familiar with that our listeners should know about?
Yeah, there's actually a very historic moment in the early 1920s. England actually outlawed women from playing on national soccer pitches. So a group of women sponsored by the Dick Kerr Manufacturing Company came to the United States to play against men's teams. And they played in Paterson. They played, I think, in South Jersey before going up to New England. And they beat the men 3 times, they tied the men 3 times, and they lost 3 times. So that was before, the Women's World Cup, which was in 1999 at Giants Stadium. Um, these women were wiping the floor with some male opponents, which was pretty historic.
Our
Mm.
beloved United States women's team, of course, has gone on to be world champions.
Yep.
Uh, so a great statement against sexism there for sure. So an interesting historical note about this is that even before there was a United States, the Lenape and Delaware Native American tribes were recorded as playing a game called Pusahaman as far back at the start of the 17th century, where a ball made of deer skin and stuffed with deer hair was thrown and kicked towards goalposts. The field of play was often on the beaches of the Jersey Shore, and teams of women, there you go, Sue. So it's showing how things maybe took a step backwards as time went on, and they would also play against teams of men. Steve, kind of taking us into the modern era. Who are some soccer stars from New Jersey that our listeners might be familiar with?
I mean, it's funny that you say that the teams are women because I think in New Jersey history, we have produced some of the greatest women soccer players of all time. I think Carly Lloyd is one of the greatest athletes in New Jersey history. Her hat trick won the World Cup for the U.S. team in 2014. We have Christy Pierce, another great defender. Heather O'Reilly was just added. And Tobin Heath were just voted into the American Soccer Hall of Fame recently. These are four of the best women's players of all times. Gold medals, World Cups, any accomplishment you want to mention in the history of the sport goes through New Jersey.
I like it. The host state for the 2026 World Cup final turns out to be a spiritual home of kind of soccer all along. And maybe no surprise that the first U.S. Soccer Federation, the first in the world outside of Britain, was based right here in Newark. That's pretty great, right? And it's funny, though, how in modern times we feel the need for rules and records to determine the official beginning of something, when in fact, sports have probably been played for as long as these lands have been in existence. Sue, do you have any thoughts about that, or just about like maybe our tendency towards sports?
Well, I mean, I think people are inherently competitive and they also like to team together. So those things make sports a natural outlet. I grew up in New Jersey when the Cosmos were playing soccer and Pele was here. And I mean, that was the center of the soccer world. He was the most famous player at the time. So I think that it people gather together around sports, and I mean, I grew up my dad went to University of Texas. I've watched every Longhorns football game, I think, since I was 5 years old. That was all family came together, and when Texas played in Giant Stadium, my dad got 30 tickets, and, that's a way for family members to keep in touch and, just how to be Longhorns fan for a day.
I mean, Sue, think about all that history with Pele and having it in the Meadowlands. I mean, there's a reason that Kearney, New Jersey is Soccer Town, USA, right? I mean, that's Tab Ramos. I mean, there's so many great players who come from that part of the country. And it's funny, if you're watching the World Cup now, you're going to see two of them on TV. Alexi Lawless, one of the greatest Rutgers players of all time, one of the greatest athletes in Rutgers history, will be one of the big voices with Carly Lloyd, who we mentioned before, on every Fox broadcast. It's just funny to kind of trace those origins of the sport of soccer through the years. Yeah, there's a lot of tradition here.
Yeah, and I kind of want to ask about like just like kind of for both of you, just the narrative about sports, right? With baseball, pro basketball, and football, like where would we be kind of as a society without the sports world? Because sports is driven as much by character as great plays, right? We talk about heroes, we talk about villains, we talk about the goats, we talk about the fall guys, right? And so like how do we like talk about that in the narrative in the way that we kind of assign lifelong narratives to sports? Steve, did you want to take that first?
Yeah, sure, man. There's such a great uniting force. I mean, if you look at it right now, I'm not sure when this is going to air, but the Knicks, what they're doing to New York City right now, their first championship in 53 years. When these teams are good, when Rutgers is good, when Princeton goes to the NCAA tournament, when we see it with the Giants and the Jets here in New Jersey, when the Devils win a Stanley Cup, I mean, it just pulls the entire community together. And I think there's part of that is timeless, right? Like the crowds weren't as big back in a century ago, in some of these sports, 50 years ago in some of these sports. But even for high school sports in New Jersey, there's no bigger tradition on that level than I would take New Jersey high school sports against any state in the country, California, Florida, for tradition, for the depth of sports that are offered. And that brings communities together on a micro level, the smaller towns, like my hometown. We still talk about, the 1989 Nutley High School Maroon Raiders and the way they were able to, go to play against Randolph and got jobbed of a state title. There's things that I think that just bond us in a way that, given all the differences, all the fractures in society that you just don't get in a lot of other ways.
Yeah, when I was growing up, I grew up in Clifton, and we had the annual Thanksgiving football game. So before you had Thanksgiving at home, before you were watching the Cowboys on TV or whatever, you were watching Clifton play Passaic or whoever in football, and that was really part of the tradition of just growing up in Clifton. I love writing about sports because you get all the emotions in 2 hours. You have defeat, you have, excitement, you have, unbelievable thrills, and it's easy to write exciting material when you're basing it on exciting things that are happening.
And so speaking of that, you're both familiar with like a longer history of sport in New Jersey, going all the way from the local, the collegiate to the professional levels. For both of you, who are your goats of New Jersey all time at all levels?
Carl Lewis, a 9-time gold medal winner from the Olympics, perhaps the most decorated track and field Olympian of all time. And I think this is good. So I'm going to go prediction. To think that we would then 20 years later get an athlete who could top Carl Lewis in Sidney McLaughlin Levrone, who is who's the two-time Gatorade Player of the Year track and field athlete when she was in high school at Union Catholic, went to the 2016 Rio Olympics in high school junior, came back 4 years later, won a pair of gold medals, won another 2 gold medals at the 2024 Olympics. She is just entering the prime of her career. When the 2028 Olympics roll around, I think the entire world will be waiting to see what Sidney McLaughlin Levrone can do. And I'm going to say this now, Carl Lewis, you are on the clock as far as the greatest athlete in New Jersey history.
I bring in some women, and one person who deserves some credit, I feel, is Maria Pepe from Hoboken, the birthplace of baseball. Well, she tried to play Little League baseball in 1972, and she actually played 3 games until the Little League threatened to decommission the Hoboken team because they were allowing a woman in the game. And because of her, and unfortunately, because Little League just couldn't stand the idea of women playing baseball, they created a softball system. So all girls who wanted to play Little League were shunted into softball. Well, today we have a National Women's Professional Baseball League about to start again, the first one since the All American Girls League of the 1940s. And, Maria Pepe deserves some credit. There is now a tournament named after her. She's ironically, in the Little League Baseball Hall of Fame. So she's definitely one. Two other athletes who they weren't born in New Jersey, but they lived in New Jersey. Gertrude Ederle in 1926 swam the English Channel faster than any man had ever done it and was on the front page of the New York Times. I mean, there were, I think, 3 full pages of coverage of her. She was a phenomenal woman. She lived into her late 90s, lived the last decades of her life in New Jersey, and she was a hero of mine because I'm a swimmer. Um, and the third one is Althea Gibson, who also lived in New York, but moved to New Jersey. And actually, she was the first athlete I ever interviewed. I was a kid, and she was like imposing huge hands, huge Wimbledon trophies behind her. She was the first Black athlete, male or female, to win at Wimbledon and the U.S. Nationals, which are the U.S. Open. And she started I think it was some kind of racket sport game for inner city kids in Newark in the 70s when I got to interview her. I was working for the Herald News back then. So Althea Gibson, she's a phenomenal athlete in any state and definitely one for New Jersey to remember. So
Yeah, and then kind of like following up on that theme that you sort of raised there at the end, Sue, Steve, can you tell us about the importance of Monty Irvin and Larry Doby?
Of course, I don't think there's any as pioneers go for sports in the world. Forget in this New Jersey. I mean, Larry Doby integrated the American League. The Patterson natives, one of the most significant baseball players of all time. Monty Irvin, believe he played on the Newark Bears as well. One of the first Black players in Major League Baseball. The two of them have deep roots in New Jersey. Started it in the Negro leagues and became baseball Hall of Famers. I believe both of them are in Cooperstown. So certainly there, you can't write the history of baseball without either one of those players.
Most of you know the story of Jackie Robinson crossing the color line and making his debut for the Brooklyn Dodgers in 1947. Fewer people know about Larry Doby and Monty Irvin, two players who grew up in New Jersey and played for the Negro League's Newark Eagles. Now, Doby was the first Black player of the American League when he signed with the Cleveland Indians, and he helped them win the World Series in 1948, hitting the first World Series home run by a Black player in the process. Now, this is despite all of the racist abuse he received. Monty Irvin signed with the New York Giants, where he helped them go to the World Series in 1951, where they lost to the Yankees. And then again in 1954, where they beat the Cleveland Indians. Now, both of them suffered by being targeted by pitchers, racial epithets from teammates and spectators, death threats, and even being spat on by fellow players. Both were inducted to the National Baseball Hall of Fame, and Monty Irvin went on to become Major League Baseball's first Black executive. The Negro Leagues last season was in 1951, after Major League Baseball finally accepted integration. Okay, to give you a little bit more context for the type of overt racism that someone like Larry Doby was up against, let's go all the way back to July 14th, 1887, when the International Baseball League voted to ban the signing of Black players when a guy called Cap Anson refused to play the Newark Little Giants until their two Black players were left off of the team. It means that essentially Black players had to find other ways to play ball, a desire that solidified in 1920 with the creation of the Negro League. And it was really popular too. For example, the American Giants Club drew nearly 200,000 fans the following season. The league also featured some really talented players too, like Cool Papa Bell and Turkey Stearns. By 1942, 3 million fans were turning up to watch Negro Leagues games. Steve, can you tell us a little bit about Chuck Wepner and his
Okay.
achievements, and maybe how his achievements might be known to people even if they don't associate him with his name?
Well, of course, it's the real Rocky, Chuck Webner, Bayonne Leader. He's someone I've gotten to interview several times in my career, and he might be one of the greatest characters in New Jersey sports history. Here's a guy who was known for just being a big opponent. He got punched so many times in his face that his old scars would open up. So he earned the nickname the Bayonne Leader. But A young Sylvester Stallone was watching his fight against Muhammad Ali when he knocked down Ali in later in the fight, although Ali later said that Wetmer stepped on his foot. I'm going with Chuck Wepner on this one. He knocked him down later in the fight. It became one of the surprising moments in boxing history that this guy, big guy from Bayonne, could last as long as he did against the greatest of all time. Sylvester Stallone was watching it and inspired the Rocky movies and all that came after. The thing that's great with Chuck Wepner is he just didn't inspire one movie. He had a couple later just about his life that came out where he was he was just featured in there. I mean, just such a Jersey character, Hudson County through and through. And there's a statue of him in Bayonne. You can go there and touch his feet if you want to go, if you want to see him.
Yeah, and just to kind of outline the amazingness of that story, I think we should always go back at it. Like for someone who's like a complete outsider to go toe to toe with the greatest boxer of all time, right? Like what an amazingly inspirational story. Didn't he like go on to fight bears later on as
Yes, he
well?
did. He did. He became sort of, and it's funny because he had such a fascinating life, and he tells the story so many times. But yeah, he fought bears. I mean, he became like an attraction to himself that he was, anything to kind of get people in the ring. But this is just the way that boxing was back in the day, and for him to get a shot against Muhammad Ali and to last as long as he did against the greatest of all time is certainly a gritty New Jersey athlete if there ever was one.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that story. George Foreman, he's not available. Okay, just get a bear in there. I'll fight the
Get a
bear.
bear. That's something you couldn't get away with in 2026, by the way. Let's face that. There's no boxing bears anymore. That's something for the history books.
And I want to stick to that theme of actually of gritty. Who are some other athletes that you say sort of represent the spirit of Jersey, of kind of that toughness and that edge? Would you say?
That's a good question. I mean, you mentioned Tim Howard earlier. I love him as a style, coming from North Brunswick, going across the sea to become a star in Manchester. He's a good one. He doesn't get enough credit, but I think one of the greatest athletes in New Jersey history is Mike Trout. I mean, just from sheer talent, but also, here's a guy who plays the game the right way. I think everyone, if it were for injuries, we might be talking about him as one of the 25 best baseball players of all time. Unfortunately, he's been slowed down by injuries later in his career. I mean, there's so many that have come out of this stage who have sort of, define their own sports in different ways.
Carly Lloyd in her era was the best. I mean, she you could depend on her to score. She had a hat trick, I think the 2015 World Cup that won it. She she never tired, never seemed to tire. You could depend on her to take the entire team on her shoulders, which to me is extremely exciting. And she did that during that World Cup. And afterward, I think after she retired, she was on that. There was a Fox show where they took military people and they trained you to be, under the most difficult circumstances where you were attacked by snipers, and she won. So this woman is not just a winner on the soccer pitch. She's got that mentality. And I really did love to watch her play.
Thank you so much, Sue. And like, let's just take a moment to kind of reflect on the massive accomplishment of Carly Lloyd's career. I mean, this is someone who scored 134 international goals in 316 appearances, including game winning goals for the USA national team in the 2008 and 2012 Olympic gold medal matches, plus a sensational hat trick in the 2015 Women's World Cup final. Her performance in this tournament won her the Golden Ball, the award for the top scorer of the competition and best player of the tournament. Winning two World Cups helped her to be nominated as FIFA Player of the Year, basically the trophy for being the world's best footballer. And she won that in 2015 and 2016. And she was a success overseas too, winning the FA Women's Cup in England with her side Manchester City. But all those numbers and accolades don't really, do justice to the impact that she made. When she started playing in 1999, there was no National Women's Soccer League in the United States. By the time she retired in 2021, she was the highest paid female soccer player in the world with a reported $500,000 a year salary. Sue, could you
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about the history of basketball in New Jersey? What should we be looking at?
Well, basketball was invented by James Naismith up in Springfield, Massachusetts. But in 1896, that was actually an important year for a couple of reasons. In general, the first women's intercollegiate game was played out in California at that. It was Stanford versus Berkeley, and the score was 2-1. So it was also very exciting, like that first base football game. But in New Jersey in 1896, there was the first known pro game between the Brooklyn and Trenton branches of the YMCA, since the YMCA was so important to basketball. And that ended up with a score of 15-1, so it was infinitely more exciting than than the women's game, I guess. Um, and a league formed, 2 years later, the National Basketball League, with 3 teams from Philly and 2 teams from New Jersey, and, that was really the beginning of organized basketball league, and so it started right here in Jersey.
So baseball was the first in this regard. The Cincinnati Red Stockings turning pro as far back as 1869, but basketball's inflection point happened right here in Trenton, New Jersey. The NBA, that had 2.5 billion fans worldwide in 2023, traces its way all the way back to that moment. So big shout out to Trenton and the birth of the modern NBA that we love. Okay, I have a question I'm going to pose to both of you. And Steve, forgive me if this was on the list of top 100. Where does Dr. J come in on your list?
We were very specific, and I think it's important the distinction between great New Jersey athletes. I think you got to be raised here at least. And Dr. J was not. He's not from New Jersey, so we left them off the list. A lot of tough decisions with that. So the best basketball player in New Jersey history, Shaq. Born and raised in Newark, New Jersey, still considers Newark his home. Rick Barry, another one, underhanded free throws. One of the greats coming up, Roselle, a native. He's from Jersey. For us, if you're going to claim it, I know the New Jersey Hall of Fame has this rule where if you live here for 10 years, like Patrick Ewing's in the New Jersey Hall of Fame, well, he's not from New Jersey. He's from Jamaica. We can claim him, I guess, but we have so many great athletes as it is. We can have a starting five of just straight New Jersey players with Dick Vitale and Bill Raftery announcing the game, because we also have the best announcers in sports from in basketball from New Jersey as well.
Can you tell us a little bit more about how New Jersey's working class communities have contributed to America's history of sport?
I mean, I don't think there's any question that that's it's a big part of it, right? I mean, you look at the different communities in New Jersey, a lot of blue collar places. For me, when I think of basketball in New Jersey, I think of that corridor between Jersey City, Newark, and Elizabeth, and I think you see so many different great teams coming from there. Let's start with St. Anthony. That little tiny public school, public private school, Catholic school, right at the mouth of the Holland Tunnel, that became a powerhouse in high school basketball, with Bob Hurley Sr. ending up getting to the Hall of Fame because of that. And you just take that corridor down there through Elizabeth and all the great teams, Luther Wright, and all the great teams from Elizabeth High School that came from there to Newark. And again, you channel the great teams that have come through. Shabazz girls basketball in Newark. There's a reason why they're known as one of the great teams in New Jersey history. I mean, you could take that to Passaic in the 20s. I mean, the longest winning streak in high school basketball will be unbreakable for the Passaic High. I don't forget the number off the top of my head, but I think it's in the 130s. So yeah, there's so many communities that are blue collar, working class people who have kind of embraced sports, and certainly it's a big part. Certainly a big part of New Jersey history.
Yeah, and thinking about kind of college talent, something that we've talked about previously in the show. Can you tell us a little bit about the importance of Paul Robeson when it comes to sport in New Jersey?
He was a great football player. He was a brilliant man. He later became a singer and a performer, and yeah, and he was, I believe, the first or the only black player on his teams in college. And he broke barriers, but man, he had a great baritone voice, I'll tell you that. He was in what was it, Showboat, right? He sang Old Man River. That's what I loved.
It was like 11 varsity letters at Rutgers. I mean, I
Did
think
he really?
He did it. I mean, yeah, and still even now, it's funny when you think about how long Rutgers has been at college sports. He's still almost universally regarded as the greatest Rutgers athlete, and he's celebrated down there Paul Robeson Day to this day. And I realize that his reach obviously goes far beyond what he accomplished as an athlete, and this was before someone of his talent could go to the NFL or could go to there was really no professional football. There was, but there was no professional football the way we have it now, where you could make a living doing it the way. So he did, he obviously went in a different a different path for his life that was much more significant than what he accomplished as an athlete. But at Rutgers, still he is regarded as the greatest athlete in school history.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I kind of see him as like a precursor to Jim Brown in a lot of ways, right? I mean, you talk about someone who kind of transcends kind of sport,
Mhm.
even though their sporting career is like Hall of Fame, right? So this is the son of a former slave, and back in 1915, he was one of only three African Americans to enroll at Rutgers University, and he was the only black student on campus during his time there. He was athletic, academic, rugged, and strong, and when he first tried to join the football team as a 17-year-old, teammates beat him up on the practice field, breaking his nose and dislocating his shoulder. And even that sort of didn't deter him. You can actually listen to the audio recording where he was dragged in front of a Red Scare Congressional Committee, where he speaks to a sitting member of Congress in a way that gives you a sense that he's not someone that's going to bow down to anyone. It is one of the great examples of historical shade, as they call it now, that you can listen into. So definitely recommend that. Go to Paul Robeson, Red Scare, or I believe it's the House of Un-American Activities Committee, and you can listen to the entire audio transcript of his testimony there. Let's talk about this celebratory year now. We've got some sporting events coming up here in New Jersey that some people may have heard of. Steve and Sue, do you want to talk about some of the things that you're looking forward to?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the World Cup. It doesn't get any bigger than this. This will be the biggest sporting event in New Jersey history. When the World Cup final, again, this is not a American event. This is an international event. When that is played at it's no longer we can't call it MetLife Stadium because FIFA will punish me at New York, New Jersey Stadium, which of course, as you mentioned at the start of the hour, they put New York first, which is ridiculous. So I'm going to call it New Jersey, New York Stadium in the Meadowlands when they play the World Cup final there, whether it's Spain, Argentina, whether it's Brazil, whoever it will be the biggest sporting event in New Jersey history. The tickets will be outrageously expensive. Hopefully, NG Transit trains will get people there on time, but it's going to be yeah, it's an unprecedented level, and I think the only thing that comes close. New Jersey, of course, did host a Super Bowl there, but there's one of those every year, and it's really only of interest, to the broader American public. This is a worldwide event, and it's going to be right here in Jersey.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm looking forward to trying to avoid the New Jersey Turnpike for a month because I was driving down just the other day. Then this is a week before the tournament starts. Every exit had a notice about World Cup traffic. All the way down to exit one.
Which
So
is amazing because you can't park there, so I don't know how. Like, where's all the traffic coming from? Can't
I don't
they
know.
don't let the FIFA's not letting anybody park there. It's gonna be yeah. It's funny. Yeah, it's a great point though. I saw the same signs you did.
Yeah, well, maybe that will, lead the way to other large, sports events in the future. I mean, I remember when the New York City was trying to get the Olympics for 2012, and that fell through. But if they can manage the traffic and manage the logistics, maybe there's more in the future.
Yeah, and speaking of that, kind of needing to manage the logistics, how excited do you guys think we are for the World Cup here?
Well, very, I guess. I mean, I'm not as much because I don't like the traffic. I just wanna sit home and watch.
I think based on everything I've heard there's a lot of excitement, and it depends on what your perspective is. I don't know how many people are excited about going to the games. I mean, the cost is so prohibitive. It's hundreds of dollars per ticket for the worst seats. Getting there is difficult, but I do know that the one thing about it is there's so many communities here. whether it's the Portuguese and Brazilian fans in the Ironbound, whether it's all across the state, basically every community you can find, Mexican fans, you can find American fans, of course, Brazilian fans, English fans. I mean, and a lot of these teams are coming here, which is interesting. And Brazil will be here for an early game. France will be here. England will be here. Germany will be in the Meadowlands for games. Senegal's training at Rutgers. Morocco's training in New Jersey. Like all of these teams are in the community as a part of this. So you might be at your bagel store and run into, if you look at someone who looks like he's pretty good at soccer, who knows? Could be the star player for Senegal.
Wow.
Yeah, that's an amazing thing. Yeah, one thing is I think people do during World Cup time. You just like you hit it on the head there, Steve. They get a sense of the diversity of our state, right? I'm even thinking about just in Essex County when you talk about like at one end of Essex County, you have kind of the Armbound district where you have Portuguese and Brazilian fans and maybe Ecuadorian fans. But then you go west of there, like you're going to find a lot of Italy fans in a lot of different towns in Essex County as well, right?
Yes, of course. Although those towns would be disappointed. I don't think Italy made it to the World Cup this year. So people in Nutley, in my hometown, unhappy or will not be watching it. The Italians from my hometown will not be pleased with it. But yeah, no, you're right. I mean, pretty much every ethnicity in the world is represented in our state. That's just one of the things that make it great, and I think that's why the World Cup is so popular. You get these great stories where you've got smaller countries, Curacau's in the World Cup, right? You got smaller countries that are going up against these giants, and that's what makes it fun. That's what makes sports fun. Be able to watch
Like
these
like
matchups.
like Chuck Webner and out
Exactly.
east.
Chuck Wepner, the Chuck Wepner of soccer. There'll be upsets. There'll be great thrilling, and there'll be a lot of 0-0 ties too, because that's soccer. But yeah,
Yeah.
And so, like, I wanted, yeah, going from big picture to like maybe a personal story. What is your favorite personal memory of sports here in New Jersey?
For me, so my dad was the dad on the block who played softball with all the kids. So he would pitch on our driveway and we would hit. And my one of my best athletic achievements, besides the triathlon I did, was breaking the glass in the light post at the house across the street when I hit the ball because back then it was the boys who were supposed to be the sluggers, and so that was a game with my dad. They were horrified. We had to pay for it, but still, it was a sign of, some kind of success that I could actually break a little window with my hitting. So
well, now it's been so you need to embellish that story, because as time passes, that window's not a little window. That's like a plate glass storefront at this point, Sue. Come on.
well, and
You
they
got
weren't.
you
It
gotta take it
wasn't.
to that level.
The owners were in the mob, so I there could be a whole movie about this.
It's funny for me. I don't have any. My exploits on the field were not good. I will be completely honest. I don't have any even stories to pump up. I've been extremely blessed and fortunate. I've been as a sports columnist, both for the Star Ledger when I started, now India.com, that I've traveled to some of the greatest sporting events in New Jersey history. And I mean, I two that come to mind, of course, the first giant Super Bowl, with Eli Manning beating the undefeated Patriots, and seeing the fact that the pass that everyone remembers, the helmet catch,
Yeah.
was caught by a kid from Montclair, New Jersey, the town where I live in now. To me, that's so poetic. That's so powerful for me. As a New Jersey kid who never made another catch in the NFL, but made one of the biggest catches in sports history. The fourth receiver on that team, a kid who had to work his way up from every step of the way in his life, from Montclair to Syracuse to the NFL, to have that moment, one of the best catches in Super Bowl history, was great. And then the Olympics. I mean, I just love the opportunity to see athletes who are unheralded, who people might not know, the ones who aren't the stars, like the Carly Lloyds or like even the Sydney McLaughlin, the ones who you see spend their entire life trying to get to a point. Fencers, runners, even swimmers. I just love capturing those moments, and for me, that's always been the best part of being a sports writer, is finding the athletes who are accomplishing great things, and always for me, they're New Jerseyans. So they could be your neighbors, your friends. I just love that part of the job.
Well, yeah, and for both of you, just kind of a question like, what was it that made you fall in love with sports to pursue your line of covering them as, either from a media standpoint or a historical standpoint?
For me, I was in college in the early 70s and I was studying women's history and I found out that women had played sports like way before we knew about it with the women playing baseball in the 40s and women playing, winning Wimbledon in the 10s and 20s, and I just wanted to know more stories and I wanted to uncover them, and every time I opened or went to the library, I found more about women riding bicycles and changing the way women dressed because they didn't want to get their skirts stuck in the spokes. And so I think sports is integral to society, to progress. And I mean, it's way more than just watching a game, although that's a lot of fun too. So.
You heard it here first. Sports, not only something that we enjoy, but transformative in the lives of our two wonderful guests. I want to thank Steve Politi from NewJersey.com. Thank you so much for joining us, Steve.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
And historian Sue Macy. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us.
Sure, we had a lot of fun. I appreciate it. And go World Cup.
As with all the episodes of this series, it's so hard to fit in all the amazing stories relevant to the topics presented by Sue and Steve. Thank you so much, guys, for doing such a champion job for us today. The Garden State is not only the home of sporting greats like Tim Howard, Jersey Joe Walcott, Shaq, Derek Jeter, Carl Lewis, Mike Trout, Franco Harry, and the list goes on and on and on, as you've heard today. But it's also about the seminal moments in the development of many sports and cultural values that we have today. Check out our show notes with all the links and extra info on all the historical sites that you can visit around our great state. And keep in mind, I don't know if you've heard, we're hosting the World Cup in 2026, people. So get your tickets and come join the greatest shindig in soccer. Who knows? Maybe the United States will lift the trophy in the same stadium where Pele used to play for the Cosmos. Okay, final whistle, guys. We're out. No extra time. Well, everyone, that concludes our series on the wonderful history of our beloved Garden State. We want to thank the producers of the show. We want to thank all of our contributors. And most of all, we want to thank you, the listeners. You can listen to past episodes, and you can also see us around in New Jersey. We'll have some pork roll or Taylor ham, whichever you prefer.